Acton Boxborough Regional School Committee to order. This meeting is being conducted as a hybrid meeting. Our school committee members are here in the auditorium, along with members of the public that choose to join us here. The following committee members are in attendance tonight: Benjamin Blumenthal, Tessa McKinley, John Peterson, Nora Shine, Andrew Shorts, Yevon Wang, and myself, Adam Klein. Evelyn Abay, Isaiah, Amy Krishnamurthy, and Kira Cook are absent tonight, and Ginny Kremer may attend, but she may be a bit late. In an ongoing effort to make our meetings as secure as possible, members of the public who wish to comment during the meeting were asked to register 24 hours prior to the start of this meeting using the link that they found at the top of the agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the meeting may use ActonTV's YouTube channel. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the ActonTV's website at actontv.org. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Also welcome back to all of our teachers and staff who started yesterday. Is that correct? Yep. So great to have everybody back and have the schools bustling again. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to everybody here in the committee and then also to the public for all of those members of the public who really actively participated last week as we discussed one of our new policies. It was really great to see the level of discourse and the involvement of the community for that. I was really glad to see that. All right, moving on to the public participation time of the meeting. If anybody is either here in person or pre-registered online who would like to speak on an item that is not on the agenda, they can either raise their hands and they can speak for up to 3 minutes each. We do have 2 attendees on Zoom. If either of you would like to participate, feel free to raise your hands. Oh, hi, Greg. All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to our ongoing business, and I'm going to hand it over to Peter for the school opening update.
All right, so hello everyone. The school opening update, we did quite a lengthy presentation and discussion last week. So the biggest piece, obviously Adam said we welcomed our teachers back yesterday. It was very exciting, a little different this year than what we might have typically done. Normally we would bring all of our teachers and staff, which is about 1,000 people, into the high school auditorium for about an hour and a half in the morning. We decided we did not want to put the same number of seats in quite that type of a space this year. Last year we did it on Zoom, and in speaking with Mike Balalescu about how we wanted to open, the one thing we said we did not want to do this year was do anything related to Zoom to start our school year. So instead we actually held it outdoors on Leary Field as an alternative. We let people kind of pick their spacing, so some people sat on the hill, some people sat in the end zone, some people sat on the field. It was kind of a nice venue for that. We were able to recognize our new staff for everyone and some of our new administrators. We were able to recognize the staff members who were hitting their 30-year anniversary as well, and we were able to also recognize staff who were earning professional teacher status, which are those staff who are entering their 4th year. So that was exciting as well. It was just a nice way of starting. It was hot, so we tried to keep it brief, and then everyone went back to their schools for the remainder of the day and more professional learning today. So we're all very, very excited to welcome our students back on Monday. We obviously voted the mask policy last week, and we just want to reiterate we are starting the year with requirements for masks indoors for everyone, staff and students, pre-K through 12. The day after we voted the mask policy and went through an extensive community process, the state announced that they were considering a mask mandate as well, which was voted into effect as of Tuesday. So now it is a statewide requirement that all students are masked in schools, at least until October 1st. They want to get students into school, evaluate after a month, see what public health data looks like, and then proceed. The good news is every single element of the state mask mandate mirrors what we put into place. So a requirement that in order for students eventually to remove masks, they would need to be vaccinated, similar for staff. They want to evaluate based on public health data after about a month, which is similar to what we were intending to do. So obviously at elementary school, that means masks are going to be here for quite a while until vaccines are available. And at secondary, we really want to see a significant stretch of time, a few weeks, 2-3 weeks of really good public health numbers in the community and the surrounding region before we start to think about that. With that, what I wanted to do also by having this on the agenda was just open up any remaining questions you might have had from last meeting about how we're opening schools, any COVID protocols, things like that. We wanted to just provide some time for you to ask any questions that are still outstanding for you.
Go ahead, Nora.
Thank you. I've been hearing a lot of questions from community members, especially I think at the middle school and high school, about time outside. And I know that's really up to the building administration, but I was wondering if you had information that we could share about how they will be able to be outside as much as possible, or if they're eating outside, or just sort of what that looks like.
Yeah, so at both the secondary schools, there were outdoor lunch options at both schools. Last year, the junior high had an outdoor lunch option. They're doing the exact same setup this year. They had about half the students chose to eat outside, and that's a significant amount of time. Additionally, we encourage teachers to bring students outside, but if every teacher tried to bring all their students outside, we'd run out of space there as well. So we have to leave it up to some teacher discretion there. At the high school, students also often have a free period in which they're able to get outside, take the masks off, things like that. So, I would venture to say it's anywhere between, truly a half hour and an hour a day, depending on the level where I think probably students would be able to get a mask off. Sure.
Although, not at all important for the short term, as today again we had 1,800 cases. When I looked again at the procedure, I realized that there wasn't a defined case for the elimination of the mask requirement in the procedure. So I don't think any action obviously needs to be taken at the moment, but obviously it would surely be an objective to achieve some condition where we could toss our masks.
Yeah, that's actually something that's been on my mind even since the last meeting. I'd like to be a little clearer about what we're going to look at. And it doesn't mean that there's any one metric that we're going to look at by being clearer. I think the clarity needs to come in explaining to the community that it's a decision that we'll look at a variety of data, which is local, regional, and statewide data in proportionate order of importance, with obviously local being the most important data we look at. It's also about having a little bit of a duration that we trust that numbers have come to a stable place and come back down, probably toward the area where we were in July, early July and late June from a public health standpoint. And then really at that point, we also need to talk to our medical advisory board about what we're seeing and hear from them about their recommendations as we make any decision. From a committee standpoint, what you should expect to hear is, I come to you every 2 weeks with a superintendent's update. We'll certainly be sharing information about public health numbers, what we're seeing about any type of transmission in our schools, or hopefully the absence of transmission in our schools, as well as kind of where we're at in the decision-making process. So, we'll certainly keep you updated, and as you're aware, or you might not be aware if you're new, whatever we update you on every 2 weeks, we then send out to families the next day, so that what you get, families get as well, as kind of a bi-weekly newsletter out of our district office. So we hope to keep good channels of communication open with you and with our school community as well. But we will update that procedure and bring that back to show you.
Hey, thanks again for everything you did last time around and the last week rather, in getting us through the mask mandate process, even to be usurped by our friends in state government. But the last time we went through this, we had a lot of mitigation. And a lot of mitigation due to our distancing and our masking and all of our policies. This time, we're mandating masks. We're not doing much about distancing, and I know we don't necessarily have the space inside our buildings, but I'm concerned about, in particular, lunch and snack time, and the individual buildings, recognizing that you can't do everything. And I know principals are starting to get information out about lunchtime, but in our rooms that have non-vaccinated majorities, our elementary schools, they'll go from 24 kids in a classroom with masks on to 24 kids in a classroom with masks off, eating, and then back to masks on. And the mitigation that happens during that time potentially goes away simply because now you're in a room full of kids who are breathing on each other.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you could provide any additional guidance or recommendations, rather, for the students and teachers inside the elementary schools around ways to be able to continue mitigation even within the snack time area.
Yeah, so, I think as I've thought about this, I think I want to go back to, kind of last year in April when we brought, most of our students back into schools. We went from that 6 feet of distance in between students to 3 feet as the two cohorts merged, and we brought some of our remote students back. At that point, we were at about 18 or 19 students in a class, sometimes even 20. So, the idea of how much space between students is kind of an order of magnitude of that. It's not like we're doubling our class sizes. We're not adding, 40% to these classes. What we're doing is we're adding, 3, 4, or maybe a 5th student in some cases. So, the look of the class may be a little bit different, but even in a normal situation, I mean, 3 feet sounds like it's a lot of space, but, Adam and I are, far more than 3 feet apart at this point. So, I think students still are realistically going to be a couple feet apart from each other. It's not like we've gone from a hard and fast limit to nothing, if that makes sense. So I think, a lot of the past history of it is what we're relying on, and the success we had at kind of that really hard and fast 3 feet. We know there was no transmission there. Our cafeterias at lunch in all of the elementary schools are operating at 50% capacity. So, if there was an 8-person table, right now the max we're putting at them is 4 students at a table. With some different options. And I think our administrators are trying to work on a case-by-case basis. Some families are far more concerned about it, some families are far less concerned. And so we're trying to work with, families who are very, very concerned about that and look at different options for kids as well.
Yeah, and I have had a chance to see what the new junior high principal has been able to push out. I think it was really great, the communication that he's put in place. I had a chance to speak with the new principal at Douglas and the vice principal at Douglas about how they're doing it, really happy with where they are. My only real concern right now is there a way that we could provide any additional guidance to teachers regarding snack time inside the rooms for K through 6, so that these kids are able to have some kind of rule that they can look at and say, don't eat in front of somebody, or just something along those lines to be able to offer that. Because what I've heard is that because there isn't a guideline coming from the district, there isn't a rule that needs to be in place at all. And having some kind of recommendation, I'm not talking hard and fast, I'm not talking anything with a dire consequence, but some kind of recommendation to be able to say this is something that would work to continue mitigation, I think would be helpful for parents as well as kids inside these environments.
Yeah, I think, I don't know if we're going to be able to put something in place for that's going to be enforceable. And one of the things I always think about is if we're going to put a rule in place for something, you have to have a mechanism where you can make sure and guarantee that that's going to be the case every time. I'll be honest, with the number of students we have coming back in, I don't know as though we're going to be able to put like guidelines around there should be X distance between students at lunch or during snack. I'll give it some thought. I just don't want to commit to something that may or may not be actually possible. Yeah.
Yep.
Peter, I just wanted to have your opinion about do you compare to the last year? Do you think we're in a more challenging situation than last year? Or
Can you just repeat that one more time?
So compared to the last September, we are in the more challenging situation, or we should be more optimistic?
I'm going to actually say I'm a lot more optimistic going into this year than I was into last year. I think, all of the discussions that we were having internally was really bracing for how long do we think we can make it before we're going to need to shut down. Will we make it to, I think, the big internal fear last year was, can we make it to Halloween? And then we made it to Halloween and we said, okay, everyone's going to travel over Thanksgiving. We're certainly going to have to close down after Thanksgiving. And then it was the winter vacation and New Year's. And, it kept kind of getting pushed off. And at each point we thought, and so, I think, strategies, but harden our facilities by making sure ventilation is at the optimal levels. We have air purifiers in every space. You know, and those are things that took time over the course of the fall last year to make sure everything was in place. You know, as we started, we added those when we realized winter was coming and we would not be able to necessarily keep every window open all the time. So, you know, I think we've gained a lot of experience with things that do work, and I think we're pretty confident going into the year. That doesn't mean something won't happen that we don't anticipate. But, you know, I'm entering this year with an extremely high degree of confidence we're going to be in person the whole year. And I think I was 40% confident at this point last year.
So a quick question is, do we have a backup plan in case a larger population student has to be quarantined then? So last year I thought at some point we have a few hundred students in quarantine.
Yeah.
So do we have a plan for that kind of situation?
We do. So, you know, from an educational standpoint, any student who's quarantined as a result of school-based contact, right, or is in quarantine or has COVID, they're going to be able to access education, you know, via Zoom. You know, and Zoom, and it'll vary by level. So elementary, it won't be the whole day in front of Zoom. But junior high and high school, they'd have access to classes via Zoom while they were on quarantine. So I think that provides us a lot of flexibility. You know, there's always the event if for some reason we see in-school transmission, and we're really looking at that. We'll be in touch with the, you know, state, obviously local health department, but also we'll be in touch with DPH and the Department of Education. And if we ever needed to quarantine a class, we can certainly look at doing that. But, you know, I think that's really, you know, a last case resort, but it's certainly on the table.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right. Thanks, Peter.
Sure.
Next item is our consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda do not usually require discussion and are approved with one vote unless any member would like to hold an item for discussion and a separate vote. I'll read each item name, and if any member would like it held, please say hold. Approval of ABRSC meeting minutes of 7/20/2021. Recommendation to set the impressed balance of the student activity checking accounts for FY22. Approval of change of members of the Other Post-Employment Benefits OPEB Trust Fund Board of Advisors. Recommendation to approve FY22 EDCO Board Member Peter Light and Advisory Member Adam Klein. And recommendation to approve gift of $1,000 from the ABRHS Sanofi Genzyme grant.
Comments on a few of those?
Please.
All right. So the impressed balance of the student activity account, there's something in really balances haven't changed. There's no recommendation for modification. The OPEB Benefits Trust, the membership of that is stipulated. So Adam is the one recommended for that. And the EDCO board member, I'm hoping you continue with that because I was voted as the vice chair of EDCO for this year. It's also one where the district superintendent is, you know, I'll make the one comment on EDCO. EDCO is no longer a fully functioning organization at this point. EDCO exists in name only, and the board has to exist for this year. That we initiated termination proceedings for that collaborative last year because it was just not financially viable anymore. So the collaborative has stopped all operations, and the board has to continue for one more year just to finish out the closure process. So I am the vice chair going in for this year for the EDCO collaborative. So hopefully you continue that. And we thought from his advisory member, Adam would make the most sense given kind of the status of the collaborative. So those would be my three comments just to share.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. John moved, Tessa seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any abstentions? Any? Okay, that's unanimous. Moving on to subcommittee member reports. I think I might need to slow down a bit. The school building naming update. In Amy's absence, I'll report that the committee, the school building naming committee met on Monday night and will be bringing a recommendation to us as the school committee at our next meeting on September 9th. The fun thing we have for tonight is our school building committee update. Peter has some images that he's going to share with us. Take it away, Peter.
So I wanted to approach this a little bit differently, and the punchline to all of this is the project continues to be on schedule and under budget. So we'll start there. That makes that piece of it easy. Project is going along very, very well at this point. So what I wanted to do is actually start out, to me, which is really a feature of this campus. This boardwalk, today taking a look, and we will entitled thermal wells. So under this whole parking area, there are geothermal wells. That's probably housing 30% of the geothermal wells for the new building. We can put temporary parking over that. This is in process. We're examining putting a binder coat because we had some wet weather and this got incredibly muddy. We actually think even if and this is something we'll be talking about, through the building project, but we want to make sure this is useful because it would be very expensive to have to shuttle staff from off-site every day. Not only in terms of the actual cost of running the shuttles, but in terms of lost productivity for the teaching staff. So that's something we're looking at, but we did create temporary parking. This is also kind of a neat picture. This is the first kind of big finished facade that you're seeing now. So we're certainly making progress on that. I think overall, will probably, look like it's a fully enclosed building early winter, in the first half of the winter. So that's an exciting milestone for the building project. What you're looking right now is the gym area on the first floor, kind of coming in from the Arlington Street extension into the Gates site. This is above that. They're now finishing off the second floor above and third floor above the gymnasium. So that is also in progress. They're also continuing with exterior insulation on the building, and that is work in progress. This is off, on the picture on the left is off the Arlington Street extension. The picture on the right is right next to the Gates building, and you can see just how close construction is to Gates. Interior work is moving along very quickly as well. So interior classrooms are getting framed out at this point. We're also, you can see above, we are beginning to hang plumbing fixtures, mechanical and electrical are also being installed. And this is the look into one of our classrooms. You can see the doorway, a couple of windows also looking into the classroom to get plenty of light into the classrooms and corridors. Another view of the interior of the building, just to show you how quickly things are moving along inside. This is overlooking the library on the second and third floor. If you remember, there's that oval kind of look to the library. And then the learning commons would be down below on the first floor. I also wanted to take an opportunity and show you, see if I can, this is probably a pretty good drone image to show you. So a couple of things about the site that's very important. And I don't think, well, you can see my mouse a little bit. But the back area is that temporary parking that we've talked about. This out front, the bus loop is now paved and complete. What you don't get a good perspective on in this photo is there's about an 8-foot differential between the grade coming in here and the actual bus loop itself. The bus loop is now leveled with the front of the school. The way in is about 8 feet higher, and then it tapers down slowly around there. So that retaining wall is complete. We're waiting for the fencing to come in. There's some temporary safety fence up right now. The bus loop is now paved out in front of the school, so as we start the school year, the buses will actually make over here. This gives you a little bit better view. And from a school operations standpoint, the parent drop-off loop continues to be the same as it was last year, where parents come in, they actually make their way around the building, they drop off in the back, and then they turn around and can exit. So we have bus entrance separated from parent entrance, and the school has a plan. We were just walking the site today to make make sure everything was ready. This is the new septic field, and that is currently in process. We're going to continue to pump the temporary septic tank at the beginning of the school year. They're back up in terms of a couple of the pumps they needed to do some of the final testing, and those should be done in the first or second week of September, and then they'll be able to cover that up. This is about an 8 to 10 foot elevation off of the finished grade. So it's, you know, we call it Mount Newman after the principal. Let me see if I have another good view. This is kind of a back view. So you can see over here, this is that boardwalk length is now complete. This is a little bit drier now, thankfully, after a few finally dry days of weather. And you can just kind of see where the building project is at in terms of framing and completing work around the site. If you have not gotten a good the school is going to end up occupying the 3rd floor of the building. Gates occupies the 2nd floor of the building, with the 1st floor being a combination of shared spaces, gym space, and then over on this wing here is the preschool. This single-story area is the cafeteria, and we're very excited about that. So before I wrap that up, on a side note, Marie and I actually were just over in Harvard this afternoon before the school committee meeting. They were having their grand opening of the Hildreth Elementary School, which is the same architect, Carol Hebner's school, for us. See what they chose for finishes, how the architect laid things out, and it was absolutely a beautiful, beautiful school. So they've been occupied now, you know, they were occupied with about 1 month of the school year last year at the end of the year, and then they're reopening this fall. So great opportunity to go see that, and we're very thankful. So I'm happy to take any questions that you might have, but hopefully that gives you a little bit more, you know, actual image of what's going on over at that site.
Thanks, Peter. Anybody have any questions, comments? Okay. Next item is an Acton Leadership Group update.
Since we're so far ahead of schedule, I was thinking this might be a time to revisit our poetry policy. The Acton Leadership Group met this morning with Kira and myself as school committee representatives. Both the schools and the town unofficially reported essentially no net use of reserves. That would be E&D on the school side and free cash on the town side for FY21. Peter noted that reserves associated with various ABRSD operating funds were significantly reduced in FY21. He also noted that the result would have been substantially negative if federal grants had not covered COVID-related expenses. Although the ALG plan already includes an expense projection for FY22, this is not based on an informed review of the budget. It's just a simple percent multiplier of last year's budget. On the revenue side, the current assumption is that Acton will tax to the levy limit. The use of the ARPA funds possibility of moving Acton town meeting to align with Boxborough town meeting. The advantages include an additional 5 to 6 weeks to prepare for the first ABRSD budget vote, an additional month of actual expense data, an additional month of state budget data, and additional time for the Acton Health Insurance Trust to set rates. Marie noted that Acton has historically had one of the earliest town meetings. Operationally, aligning the town meetings would more efficiently use ABRSD administrative time in preparing to mid-May. If he would like to comment, I think we should invite him to do so.
You might have to just turn the switch on.
Thank you, David.
Can I just elaborate on a couple of points
Please.
that John made? You know, we did not want to do a budget presentation tonight because Dave has been on vacation the last 2 weeks. So your next school committee meeting, you'll actually hear the year-end report, and he'll be available to answer questions on that. But just to give you some really high excess and deficiency, that's what he was referring to. You know, the revenue projections last year were pretty much right on. I think we were within $70,000 on a $100 million budget, so that was pretty much flat or slightly to the good. We made up the rest of the $1.2 million really through about $350,000 of the contingency that we had set aside in last year's budget for COVID-related items is getting returned, and the rest of it was just other areas of the budget where we were able to realize some savings, whether it was personnel or materials and services, things like that. So overall, pretty good news. By returning $1.2 million, it keeps kind of the E&D balance pretty consistent with where it has been, at least for the last year. I will note that's below the committee's recommended level as set in the policy. So that's certainly something that we're going to want to talk about as we enter this budget cycle. The other piece that John mentioned that is very significant to us to be thinking about is really thinking about our revolving fund balances, community education in particular, and our extended day program took a significant hit last year by not being able to operate fully. Similarly, food services took a hit, although we were able to work with the 2 towns to get some federal aid for that. All-day kindergarten also took a real hit last year because we didn't charge the tuition because we really weren't offering a true, full-day program. We just didn't feel it was right. So, those fund balances are giving us a little anxiety at this point of the year to be thinking about what we're going to do with those long-term, and that will be another point of discussion that we have with you as we proceed. But I wanted you to at least have pretty much the same information that we shared with ALG. In a typical process, we actually share the information with you first, and then we share it with ALG, but where we were giving kind of year-end updates, it made sense to kind of share the high-level information.
Thanks, Peter. Liaisons, I think I've spoken with almost everybody, and in our next and also a request for us to create a new subcommittee of the school committee, which will be a community engagement subcommittee. So thank you to everyone who sent in their requests and who worked with me to get this put together. And like I said, we'll present the official assignments at our next meeting. All right. Statements of warrants and recommendation to approve. If everyone has reviewed the warrants, I would welcome someone to read the motion for the warrants that is in our packet. All right.
I move that the school committee vote to approve payroll warrants as follows. Number P2203 dated 7/29/21 in the amount of $638,695.52. Number P2204 dated 8/12/2021 in the amount of $659,530.38. Payroll deduction warrants as follows. Number 22-003 PR dated 7/29/2021 in the amount of $315,299.87. Number 22-004 PR dated 8/12/2021 in the amount of $135,777.98. Vendor warrants as follows. Number 22-002 dated 7/22/2021 in the amount of $1,125,378.16. Number 22-003 dated 8/5/2021 in the amount of $1,719,458.71. Number 22-004 dated 8/19/2021 in the amount of $1,993,844.07.
Second.
All right, we've got the motion in the second. All in favor? Peter?
share that I'm very excited that Beth was able to present you with copies of the Massachusetts General Laws, the abridged version. If you're new, one of the traditions we have is at next meeting, we will quiz you at random on, we try to really just nail those down. I did forward you a professional learning opportunity from MASC that might be of interest. I sent that to the school committee shell today, so you might want to take a look at that. And I think that is going to be it for tonight.
Somehow you forgot to personalize my copy of MGL.
I was going to autograph it myself, but held off.
All right. That being said, being under the 45-minute mark, I will accept a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
I've got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everybody. We are adjourned.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.